Welcome to Mastering Life's Adventures, an educational podcast about tapping into your true self, the soul, your soul, the substance of your life, to discover what life's ups and downs are really about, and how to have a greater sense of purpose, peace, joy, and fulfillment. I am Dr. Judith Holder, your host, coach, psychologist, fellow seeker who enjoys diving into the connections between spirituality, psychology, wellness, and your everyday life's adventures. All preparing and polishing you like the facets of a magnificent diamond to be your best self. If you're craving more from your life, you are in the right place. Come, let's journey together and transforming what you know into who you really are. Mastering Life's Adventures begins now.
Hi, I'm back with Vera. We had a delightful conversation in part one. I invite you to go back and listen to that. We focused on understanding feelings, emotions, human consciousness, and humanness, how it impacts evolution and one's growth. This section, part two that we're doing, is really focused around how do we transform heavy emotions into soul strengths. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Vera Hellerman and I'm from the Netherlands. I'm an emotion expert and non-duality teacher. I help integrate our feeling equipment again.
Excellent. As we're looking at heavy emotions, how would you define that?
Heavy emotions are the emotions that we find very difficult to deal with and are always down the ladder of whatever emotion groups. So this is the moment that you are very disbalanced from your natural state. So there's something needs to be done to restore that balance. So this is why all the heaviness. There's something going on in your energy field.
Mm-hmm. What do you qualify as heavy emotions?
Guilt, self-hatred, aggression, panic, depression, unhappiness, jealousy. These are different kinds of heavy emotions we can suffer from.
Where would anxiety fall?
Fear.
I see anxiety and fear like cousins.
Exactly. Yes, siblings.
With those heavy emotions, how do we transform them? How do we first be aware of them, acknowledge them, that they exist within the human condition? But what are your thoughts about how to move them or raise them?
When I work with people, I go to the root of that emotional trigger. There was one moment that an emotion was triggered. And what happens next is you can go into a roller coaster of destruction and it gets worse. The first emotional trigger in this roller coaster is most of the time based on a misconception. For example, the misconception that, we walk on the street and we meet someone and this is we don't know this person. He looks us in the eye and his eyebrow is going down. And it feels like this person is angry with us. Oh, what's going on? Help. I did something wrong? And then insecurity comes up. So when we dive into this, emotions of, I did something wrong and it hurts. It was a conclusion of the person. It was a conclusion that the eyes of the person meant that I did something wrong. We can put an acupuncture needle in that belief. What did you think you did wrong? When we get another perception of what happens in our outer world, then our inner world totally differently reacts on that. Yeah. This is the most simple, most common situation of why emotions arise and can fall into heaviness.
Because what I hear you talking about is our interpretation. So we interpret that situation of seeing that person with the frowning as being critical of us in some ways, which then starts that emotional downward and internally within ourselves. And it goes back to mirroring. We mirror that in ourselves and we think it's just the person, but it's something in ourselves that needs to be examined and looked at. Would that be fair to say?
Exactly. There's no outer world. The inner world and the outer world is one and the same. There's only an inner outer world. And it's all about us, but never about us. There are so much contradictions in life. Mm-hmm. So yes, it also comes back to inner work, looking inside when the emotion triggered. Something we assumed
Mhm. I think what happens is they think they're getting the right interpretation.
The emotion is proof.
Right. Right. It's proof, but they still believe it's right that this person was looking at me in some critical way. And how dare they? And so we go off to the races thinking this person was just being mean towards me. And the reality was, no, maybe they were just frowning because they had something in their eye.
What I see with a lot of people is when you come with a different suggestion, maybe that didn't mean that. That often people don't want to believe you. They want to hold on to that conclusion because it gives them comfort. Then they know who they are. When I say to people, I don't mind what you believe, but for you, it makes all the difference. It is your choice to see it differently if you want.
Right. It's as if you're giving an invitation to say, there's another way, another perspective about this. And that's what the soul wants. The soul wants to see it from a different perspective and not necessarily only through the eyes of your interpretation based upon your past experiences that this person is going to look at me in a negative way. And the soul says, don't put me in chains that way. Don't put me in a straitjacket that way. How can you look at another way of interpreting that frees you, allows you to grow, learn, and evolve?
Exactly. And in this case, it is such a shame, literally, because yes, we are made in the resemblance of God. Not being able to see it is hiding in the shadows of ourselves. But it hurts because deep down we know we came from light. It hurts when we convince ourselves there's something wrong with us.
Mm-hmm. An interesting word you use, convince ourselves. I think we do a lot of that.
We do constantly.
Convincing ourselves, but we don't do what the soul wants us to do. Is how does that help or hinder you in your evolution, in your own soul awareness about yourself? Because the soul says, I want you to evolve. And so you have to be open. There needs to be an openness to looking at things from a different perspective in order to have change to occur in how you live your life.
Exactly. I use a mantra. When I started to understand all this, I use a mantra and I use it, well, for months. And the mantra was, there's nothing that I know for sure. Every time I caught myself on a restricted belief, I was challenging myself. There's nothing that I know for sure. So can I look at it differently? That really changed a lot. There fell down a whole ego wall of limiting beliefs, but also all kinds of beliefs. But on a certain moment, I thought, okay, Vera, now you have to stop with that mantra because you had reached a point. I thought to myself, I'm so shameless now. If I had to pee, I just do it on the streets. Ho, 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 Vera. Now you've gone too far with this mantra. I realized, yes, we need certain beliefs to adopt a kind of self and to embody a kind of self and actually, it's our beliefs build the reality around us. Without beliefs, reality would fall apart. We need constructive ones, not destructive ones.
Right, right. There are universal principles that exist in the world, whether you're on the left, right, up, or down. They operate across the impersonality of what God is. And there's a personal personality of what God is as well. And so the soul is saying, I want to be more aware of how people are coming into my life and what I need to learn. Then God or a higher power will send you these things. And then you forget what you asked for was coming your way because it wanted you to learn these things. And you now take it offensively. It transforms into a heavy emotion that gets you stuck. And you said you wanted these experiences, did you not? That's the fickleness of the human condition. I wanted it then. I don't want it now.
But it's mirroring what you are doing inside.
Right.
Because it's energetic logic that becomes physical. It's all mathematics. So what's in your inner world, energetically, you give it attention, whether it's something that you believe or you don't want to look at. If you give it attention, unconsciously, it will come out in the physical.
Yes. I just want to score that word you used for our listeners, energetic logic. I think you can delve more into that because everything is energy, as I said in part 1, but you're saying energetic logic. So go more with that.
For me, everything is energetic mathematics. Everything is logic. So when you are looking at energy instead of physical, it all adds up. All the physical is carried by the energetical. And so when something moves, everything moves. Let me come up with a good example of energetic logic. Oh, yes. There comes an anecdote. I once had a student and she came to me on stage and she was an example of a question. And she said to me, I was on a date with my partner. We also have a couple friends, a woman and a man. This male was my former boyfriend. She was on a date with her present boyfriend, but he also knows her ex-boyfriend. So they were at dinner and she was talking about her ex-boyfriend. And her boyfriend became annoyed by it. And she was telling me it. And I said to her, so now when we look at the table, there maybe are two physical persons on the table, but the moment that you give attention to your ex-boyfriend is also sitting on the table. And then there's the three of you, but your boyfriend wants to be with you alone. Energetically, we gather all these different people when we talk about them and give them attention. So this is how energy works. Why it's annoying.
That's a great example. It ties into the power of the spoken word. When we speak, we don't realize we're speaking it into existence. We're not conscious about how we're talking. We do pull on these energies, whether we know it or not. It's energetic.
Exactly.
It comes around us. And so the power of the spoken word, it's even saying, I am angry, or I am sad, or I'm happy, I am joy. All that's energetic energy that you're pronouncing, bringing into your world, and being a co-creator, because God said in the power of the spoken word that there be light. He didn't say darkness.
Yes. Exactly. And that's what I find so interesting of the Bible. It begins with, and then there was the word. And oh my God, this whole universe starts to exist. Because there's an idea, it becomes a word, we give it attention, the energy is reacting, and then it becomes physical. It's very creative. So the principle of creation is what the first book of the Bible says. I really like that. When you look at social media and something is going on, and you look at the comments below all the videos, I really think, wow, what a dividedness, what a hatred, what a negative energy are we spreading, because there's no real interaction anymore that kind of withhold us from that. Wow.
You're making a good point, because what Christ, the soul, says is there's a standard people should live by. And it's not like in a straitjacket, but it's more principles of how you want to live your life. Through kindness, for example, is a principle, or loving your neighbor as yourself. We've moved far away from that. Social media is a great example. People have scathing remarks and negativity flying back and forth. And it's like, why are you doing that? Because you are creating that energy too. And so it's going to come
Totally
around to you like a boomerang. And you wonder why did I slip on that? Or why have that accident? Or why this happened? Or why that happened? Because you don't realize energetic energy accumulates. It comes back and says, well, you didn't forget that, but this was a year before. You did all this other stuff. And now the cycles are coming back around.
Yes, but only when the inner world is holding on to it. Because everything is now in energetic logic. So when it comes out in your word, there was an attention before. And so but this is how creation works. We believe and we repeat the beliefs. And with repetition, it becomes faster, denser, and physical. So when we want to change something, the wheel of rebirth, have you heard of it? The DE's wheel of rebirth. It is about this repetition of beliefs. This is how creation works, the repetition of beliefs. And then we have to stop this wheel and take this negative belief out of it and change it. So we don't repeat it, but we replace it by something that is more aligned with ourselves. And then this wheel of rebirth is creating something different. So we have every second, we have another chance to look at it differently, to give it another attention. And so the energy is carrying it and makes it physical.
That's where that power of the spoken word, and through the mantra or a decree, or being able to say things that you feel and you know that you can transform that particular energetic field or energy into, but through the alchemy of the power of the spoken word into another level of awareness. So it transmutes itself. And so that's what we call is in Indian tradition, they talk about karma. What comes around goes around type of thing. We don't know the cycle or the time coming around to us. So it can be further down the road that we experience it, but we don't equate it with the thing that we did a couple of years ago. And so that's where I think the conscious awareness that if we can transform heavy emotions, it allows us to stop that cycle coming back around to us to get involved in activities we don't appreciate, which is different from our first conversation about levels of emotion that you were talking about. So won't you explain it from your perspective in terms of the heavy emotions versus moving to the higher emotions?
We need to be willing to take responsibility for our part of this collective creation. I'm glad heavy emotions hurt, because that gives us a carrot to follow. By not wanting to feel that emotion and wanting to change it, you make the whole collective field lighter, and we evolve together. This is what I want to emphasize. It is brave if you are willing to look inside. We want to flee from them. But when you flee, you meet it again. You cannot flee. You have to look inside, because this is the only way out. So what we want to do is, how I approach this is we divide it in 8 different emotion groups, because each emotion has a different message. So sometimes it is needed that you change the belief about it, to reframe the belief, like we did with the man that looked into her eyes, thought we didn't good enough. But for example, with sadness, there's something else that's needed. Sadness is often, when we feel sad, the ones that are willing to look inside always immediately seek a problem. Why am I sad? What is going on? What hurt me? But feeling sadness is a healing mechanism of our inner system that brings us back into balance. Searching for a problem only holds on to the problem. And sadness says, let go. Let me do the healing. This is an example of why it's necessary that we first know what the different emotions want to tell us. Taking responsibility for it needs something else. And when we wouldn't interfere at all our emotions will restore balance. But we need to find out what we are doing. There's something we are doing that preserves the story. We need to find out what we are doing and stop with it. Yeah. We have to stop with that.
Right.
But that is sometimes very difficult. It's easier when you know what emotions want to tell you.
So with that, I heard some key aspects that you were saying, and that is being able to look at the emotion of sadness. Some people will say, well, it's not really heavy. Well, sadness is. It's still out of alignment state. Or it's like you said, that rubber band pulling out and coming back in. The word that came to my mind was messenger. Emotions are messengers to help us say, heads up, there's something to look at here if you're willing to ask the question and look at it as that mirroring aspect, that this is showing me something about me that I can continue to evolve or grow, which is what the soul wants us to do. Some people get stuck in sadness and it becomes a part of their persona, that they're
exactly
always sad that's going on.
Yes, they need to protect their sadness and their stories of sadness. And then you get that kind of type of persons that only talk about sadness. Even at parties, they're making a match out of this. I'm more sad than you. My story is heavier than yours. It gives you an identity.
We have to be aware of what identity we want and what we need to shed. This is not truly me, not the soul's evolution to move towards the Christ. You're more than that. You're not your sadness, but we get stuck there. And people don't know how to get out of it because they love their story.
Yes, it's a very nice beginning, because when we see the soul as a symphony, and we could feel into the symphony that we are, and we would imagine a human expression of that. That is what we truly want to be. And I think at the moment that longing comes up, you are ready to do the work. The moment you feel the longing and I want to be myself, the self that resonates with the soul that I am, that is when they are willing really to face their wounds. And otherwise, it is still holding on to maybe lower shadowed identity that they don't want, that they don't know how to get rid of because there's nothing else that can replace it. So this is why oneness experience are such a blessing, because there comes something else to replace the identity that's not truly you. You reconnect with your true self through experiences, something you can rely on when facing wounds, and then dissolve. They cannot dissolve when there's nothing to replace it.
Right. It just recreates itself. Yes.
Exactly.
So that's the issue, reconnecting with the trueness of who you are, the substance of your life, your soul. And what would you say, helping people move in that direction to, there's going to be stumbling, 1 step forward and 3 steps back in the process. But through your emotion code, how does that work?
I imagine that people listening to this podcast resonate with this idea. Then you're all good, because when it resonates, it means that there is a transparency for that. And then you just focus on it, because this longing is been, when something resonates with you, this is also when we, for example, fall in love with someone, something is resonating from the other towards you. And that is, when you look at the energetic of resonating, the mathematics of resonating, it's like a glass of wine. When you sing in the resonance of the glass, then the glass is moving and it blows itself up. It is accelerating. When something is resonating, it accelerates inside of you, and it comes to the surface, and it comes within your reach. So this is one. So again, when people are feeling the longing, well, then the ball is going to roll. Because this wondrous experience is not something that you can do something for. Actually, it is done by grace. But when you feel the resonance, when you feel the longing, because of this transparency, this oneness can come into you. You can receive it. It is not something that you can do for it and grab it. You have to receive it by opening yourself up to possibilities, to opening yourself up. Yeah, it can come into you like an insight, intuition.
Yeah, and I would add to that, from a soul perspective, is a combination. So it comes to you, but it's like a figure-eight flow. It comes in, it goes back out, but when it's going back out, that's when your opportunity is to be able to transform that energy, be it sadness, anger, or being other heavy emotions, transform it to be a saying to oneself, I'm going to treat this in a different way. It may be a change in belief or value, but there's an intentional desire saying, that's not going to happen here. I'm not going to have this person continue to quote unquote trigger me, because there's something in me they're pulling at that I need to transform for it to be a different experience. So the next time that person comes around, the person's reactive, the person's able to say, you know what, I'm going to be centered on this. That the God in me is the God in them.
Absolutely.
And in that centeredness, you are transcending that. And that's how you move towards those higher frequencies that you mentioned, those higher levels of joy, happiness, peace, contentment.
Exactly. I like your additions. It makes me watch what's happening when you were talking about it. I see this transformation process, which starts by, it comes to the surface. You are alarmed by something. That can be an emotion. We are alarmed by something that triggered us. We are willing to look. And then a consciousness process comes. Willing to look, feel, change, look at it differently. And then at a certain level, you've got it.
Right. And that transformational process allows the soul to say, thank you. Not existing in this lower energy that is not serving me in any way. And it allows the person to listen more to their soul and listen more to the promptings, like you were talking about intuition, in part one, and be aware that, I can do this differently. I'm not tied down to the story or belief pattern. I can change that. That's what the soul wants as a co-creator. God wants us to be able to do it. You can change this if you like. So many times people say, no, I can't. This is just the way I am.
Yes, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, but we need transparency. in which we can become more open, transparent, and enlightened even. Our lights transparent and
I think that's
shining.
ultimately what the soul is wanting, is for us to be able to become more light and to shine brighter. But if we have all this dense energy around us, it clouds the soul and it weighs it down. And the soul doesn't know. It's like, I can't do anything if you, in the humanness of the in living of life, are not willing to look at these issues or to see that this pattern that's happening is a constant pattern that's happening. It's reoccurring. And therefore, I need to look at myself to see why I keep on attracting this to myself. And that curiosity brings greater enlightenment.
Totally, for us all. We cannot evolve alone. We need to evolve together. So with all this heaviness everyone focuses on, this keeps us stuck, all of us. So there need to be brave souls that really want to look inside and raise above all those shadows and punishing themselves and get out of that drag. Yes.
I think when we are able to, through awareness and some of the other points you've been making, we have the opportunity every day to have a difference in our life, transform these heavy emotions into soul strengths. Yeah,
Totally. And not even every day. It is a decision you have to make for each moment. You slip right into it. Tomorrow I will do it. No, not tomorrow. Now. There's only now. This is your chance.
Tomorrow is not promised, but you do have each moment now. No, and this is the other piece I think that happens for individuals. Is they say, oh, it's going to be too much work, or it's going to be too hard, or it's going to take something away from me. I'm used to this, sitting with this sack of energy, but we die daily. We transform daily. How can we be more intentional about that and know we're doing this in liberation of our soul?
Yes, we can split it up in bits and pieces because a lot of people, mostly women, have experienced heavy emotions, one big mountain of emotions. And that when you try to push the mountain and change the mountain, that is too much, too heavy. So we want to split it up in bits and pieces. It's just little single steps you take. And it becomes more relieved and more relieved and more relieved every step you take. And then it's worth it. And it's not so difficult as you think. That was for listeners, by the way.
And it's something told to me growing up, step by step, it becomes a cinch. Take one step at a time, do your best, find joy in what you're doing. Then you move to the next. You're further down the road to a greater understanding of who you really are.
Exactly. Yes, that is why the differentiation of the emotion groups is helpful. We can divide when we are triggered. Emotions follow up because they want to restore your balance. So it becomes one mountain of different emotions. And then we are divided into different kinds of emotions. And this emotion says this, that emotion does that message. And these have these messages. And so we just one by one look at the different emotions. And maybe that all came from 10 seconds of an experience. We are going to divide it into bits and pieces. And then in this 10 seconds of experience lays so much healing. In these 10 seconds, the pattern is revealed that repeats itself over and over again in different situations. So by just looking at the 10 seconds of one emotional trigger, you can heal lots of different situations.
What do you find is the top emotion that people have to deal with in terms of the heavy emotions, and that can be very rewarding and freeing for them?
Yes, definitely. For me, the most prior emotion is the emotion that speaks to you in terms of this is the right timing to look at this life theme that correlates with this emotion. And when we look at that theme, then the onion is peeled. We don't have to face something underneath when the prior emotion is something else. So that's what a lot of people think. I need to dive deep. You don't need to dive deep. You have to look at what's on the surface because that is what is most important right now. And when you want to face that, you automatically go deep.
So that's a good point. Experience the now of what's going on, not necessarily
exactly.
Something out there or dig around for something.
In the past, no. That's not needed because the past is already evolved. When you go into the past, you tune into the resonance, give this resonance attention, and bring it to the now. I like to look at when the triggers are now, because that's the evolved situation of your inner world. Also, in case of traumas, it's much easier.
Tell us more about traumas. I think that is something that people don't know what to do with, and so they do nothing.
When looking back at the trauma, something happened to us, and we made a conclusion out of that. When something happens again that hits that conclusion, the trauma is triggered. Most of the time, after the trauma, we didn't heal correctly. Two things are needed to heal from trauma, energetically and mentally. That process is difficult. When you look at the animal world, when, for example, a mouse is being catched by an eagle or something, and it falls down and it survives, it suffered trauma. In nature, they're shocking. They're reeling. This is how they restore their energy system, because when shocked, your energy system peaks. Because of this motion they make, the energy field is recovering. People make conclusions out of it, and that conclusion is being held on to. But along the way, this conclusion also kind of changes. And for example, I was attacked by a goat a few weeks ago, and I noticed myself afterwards that this goat in my head became a bull. This is actually an evolution the wrong way. Yeah? It made it worse. So I had to deal with the bull. I had to make from the bull the goat again, which worked, by the way. But with trauma, people did work on it or get different examples, and the goat becomes a rabbit in their minds. It's just a metaphor. When the trauma becomes a rabbit, and the rabbit is still annoying and hurt still, when we look in the trauma when it started, we are tuning into the goat again. But looking at the rabbit, there are different things the rabbit communicates to us than the goat would do. So when we are triggered in this time, it can be that it comes from trauma, but our emotions will tell us something is triggered. There's some belief to face, and it's more honest to yourself and your present evolution and your inner self to look what's triggering you now. Only when it's very difficult to get the root of it, then maybe you want to look back to gain more clarity. But the now is always the most honest position to look at it.
So when a person looks at it in the now, from the circumstances they're experiencing, you use the now to help to guide them through the lower and higher emotions of where one can aspire and be aware of it and be more attuned to that. Is that how it works?
Yes. For example, there's an anecdote. I had a student. She was sexually abused by her father, often. So she had huge trauma. And she made, of course, the conclusion, men are bad. You have to you have to look out for men. And this is how I work with also energetic logic, because the energetic logic, their inner world is their outer world. When this is severe and so heavy and so full of ideas and experiences, it is actually very difficult to look inside. So we look outside. And I said to her, when looking in your present life, are there any men in your life that aren't bad, that don't have bad intentions? And the first reaction is, no, they're all bad. She took time, and then she told me, well, a few weeks ago, I attended a yoga class, and there was a man, well, he actually feels safe. Aha, your inner world is changing. You did the work. There are nice men entering your outer world, inner world, outer world. It's one and the same.
Yeah.
So this is how I use energetic logic and the principles of creation to look at the present evolution of what's inside. And then we go look, okay, how do you feel towards that man? And so she can adopt new feelings towards masculine.
Right. There is an adoption of new feelings of awareness. We're letting go of old viewpoints or old background. That is what the soul wants in evolution. It wants to move to a different level, to awareness. or help me to be able to use my talents that is now constricting me because of my fear about something. But so you have a talent in that area, but some people are good at public speaking. But some people say, no, I'm not. But other people that hear them say, you're great at this. What do you think you're not? Because maybe other issues, the more they do the talent, they say, I like doing it, but I don't think I can. So you get into this push-pull with the person. And I hear you helping them deal with the now. You get to do the public speaking.
Exactly.
Have the capacity to move along with that awareness and not fall back into the old sense of, I couldn't do it because of my fear.
Exactly, and people need proof, because when it derives from beliefs, we need proof to see it differently. The outer world is such a profound proof, because I cannot make it differently. You created this man in your life, so that's proof.
Any last thoughts you want to share about transforming heavy emotions into strengths?
There's a distinction between really heavy emotions, because in a lot of cases it is nice that you have someone helping you with that. Because when you don't have knowledge, when you don't have tools, when you don't know how, it's very difficult to do yourself. And well, that is something that I want to, yes. But there are all kinds of teachers. Listening to a podcast can be a teacher. What can they do? I'm always very practical. So when we would see emotions as a cluster of emotions with a ladder, then it is not possible to go from depression to wonder once. It is a glide into this ladder of emotions. When you make a little step, it's very rewarding if you came from hatred and revenge to angry. That is an evolution. Appreciate the small steps, because you're on your way, and that's good news.
Yeah, I totally agree. Appreciating the small steps. And I think because we live on a planet for forgetfulness, that we can forget that we made the small step, that we made to have the blinders. No, you did it. To help with the remembrance, and then also other tools you can utilize to continue along your way. But this has been a great conversation, and I appreciate your pearls of wisdom and thoughtfulness in sharing, seekers and listeners, about looking about heavy emotions and how they may be able to move into really strengths within a person. And it is truly through the small steps that we do take, and not these large, big steps that we have to jump the mountain or move in a particular way, but it's the kindness and gentleness and the awareness that you're building that really makes the difference. So thank you so much. And listeners, thank you for go back and listen to part 1, what we talked about. And I just want to ask Vera how they can get a hold of you if they would like.
Yes, you can visit my website. It is emotioncodex.com. And there you can find all about me and my teachings and my tools to guide you in the world. Yes, thank you for having me, Judith. I've enjoyed the conversation.
You're welcome. I've enjoyed it as well. So listeners, bye for now. Take care.
Thank you for joining me for this episode on Mastering Life's Adventures, being your best self through soul evolution. If you have enjoyed what you've heard today, I would be delighted if you would share this episode with others, leave a thumbs up, and subscribe to my Mastering Life's Adventures podcast. Look forward to your joining the next episode. Please leave any comments or suggestions you might have below. Bye for now.